In 1953, a UK citizen, Derek Bentley, was executed for murder. The facts of his offence, explored in the 1991 film Let Him Have It, were as follows. Bentley, then aged 18, was involved in an attempt to rob a warehouse with an accomplice, Christopher Craig, aged 16. However, police were alerted during the attempted break-in, and when they arrived on the scene, one policeman, Frederick Fairfax, was able to grab hold of Bentley. At this point, Christopher Craig drew the gun he was carrying. Bentley was armed only with a knuckle duster, which Craig had given to him, and which Bentley never attempted to use. All agreed that Fairfax shouted, "Give me the gun, lad." However, the next point was disputed. According to the prosecution, but denied by the defence, Bentley then uttered a key phrase, "Let him have it, Chris." Craig fired the gun, hitting and injuring Fairfax. A short time later, he shot and killed another policeman, Sidney Miles. Although Bentley's legal team denied that he had ever uttered the words, "Let him have it," at trial, they also argued that, even were Bentley believed to have uttered the key phrase, the meaning of that sentence in that context would simply have been, "Let the policeman have the firearm, Chris." On the contrary, the prosecution team argued that the correct interpretation was an incitement to violence. What Bentley meant, the prosecution alleged, was, "Shoot him, Chris." In the end, Craig and Bentley were both found guilty of the murder of Sidney Miles, under the legal principle of joint enterprise. Craig, as he was under 18 at the time of the offence, was sentenced to be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure, eventually being released 10 years later. Bentley, on the other hand, was sentenced to death. Following an unsuccessful appeal, and despite a public outcry, he was executed by hanging in January 1953. Following a 40-year campaign by his family, Bentley received a posthumous pardon in 1993, and his conviction was finally overturned in 1998. There are many troubling aspects to this case, but one of the core worries clearly concerns meaning. How were the jury supposed to decide the correct meaning of the alleged utterance? In this context, did "let him have it" express a de-escalating request for Craig to hand over the weapon, or was it the inciting call for the gun to be fired? What features could the jury have looked to, and was the judgment they made the right one? In order to answer questions like these, we need to know more about meaning. In particular, we need to know more about how linguistic items, like words, sentences, and utterances, come to be meaningful.